Hello and welcome to CMM 325 Computer-Mediated Communication for Fall 2019. Here is our Blackboard site. When you first log into Blackboard, you're going to see the announcements page. Currently, you'll see that there are no announcements found. When there are announcements in the course, this is where they will be located. For this video, it's going to take about 15-20 minutes, and I'm going to walk you through the major parts of this course so that you'll have a better understanding about how this course is laid out. That's going to make your life a lot easier as we go throughout the semester. You can always come back to this tutorial video if you ever get any questions about what's going on. So let's look at the basic layout here of Blackboard. Over here on the left-hand side, you're going to see all the major hyperlinks for the course. It's broken down into three major sections: course communication, course content, and support. We'll look at each of those here in just a second. Across the top, you have your Blackboard, your courses, community, support. Now this is going to be very important. This support tab actually is support for you as a student. It takes you to getting oriented, to online learning. It talks about academic support, institutional apologies, and technology support. So if you have any problems throughout the course of the semester when it comes to the technology, this is where you can find information for you. There's also the content collection, the library, and a program that we have here on campus called Starfish, which we are using to help students actually follow up on a lot of the problems that we may see early on in the semester or throughout the semester to help students know when we want them to be able to get help. It also helps the whole campus know that we are trying to keep students on our campus and keep them informed about what's going on in their own classes. So let's go ahead and take a look. We're going to go over here to course communication. Again, we're already in announcements. If you need to email someone in the class, whether myself or one of your students, you can do that right through email. I really don't use the calendar, but the calendar is there. So if you're interested in it, it's there. Then there also is the syllabus. I'm going to go ahead and open up the syllabus just so you can see. I have it laid out. Here is a copy of the Fall 2019 syllabus. We're going to look at that in just a second. There's also a folder here called textbook information, and it's going to give you more information about the textbook. So let's go ahead and look at the syllabus. I already pulled it up here. I'm going to make it a little bit larger on the screen just so I can walk you through it. Again, it's the CMM 325 syllabus for Fall 2019. I am Dr. Jason Wrench. You can find me in the Kuykendall Science Building, room 41. My phone number is there. Realistically, that is the worst way to try to get a hold of me unless we have scheduled an appointment to talk on the phone, because I'm not just hanging out there most of the time. So trying to get me on the phone is just never the easiest way. The easiest way to get a hold of me is always via email. I generally check those 24 hours a day almost, it seems like, during the work week. But I do ask that you give me at least up to 48 hours on the weekend to respond, and 24 hours during the week. I do have physical office hours for those of you who happen to be available on campus. Those are 12:30 to 1:45 on Mondays, and then 3:30 to 4:50 on both Mondays and Thursday. You can also follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, and there's my website, just if you are curious to learn more about me and what it is that I do. Now, you are going to see this one right here. It's in bold. If you are going to ask me a question, please type the word question in the subject line. I get a ton of email, and it just makes it easier when it is flagged that this is a question, because it's going to raise its priority in my mind, and so I'm going to answer that faster. So please, if you do have a question about the course, make sure you put the word question in the subject line. It just makes it so that I see it faster and I get it answered faster. If I will ever be out of touch for more than 48 hours, I will let everyone know that that is happening. Just as an FYI, on the bottom of the syllabus, you're always going to see what's called version, and it has the date. This is version 8/26/19. That means it's the first day of class. If by chance there is a change to the syllabus, which can always happen, that version number will change. I'll also make a note that there was a change on, like when you come up here over here to Blackboard where it says that, it'll say this is version 2 point whatever, so that you'll know that, but that's how you can change and double check that you have the most up-to-date version. Course description, you can read that for yourself. There are 3 texts. We're going to look at those more in just a second. Here are the basic learning objectives for this class. You can read those on your own. I don't feel the need to read those to you. Here is basically how your grade is broken down. There are going to be weekly quizzes that account for 30% of your grade. There are reaction papers. We'll talk more about those in a little bit. There are weekly discussion questions, and there is a final project that accounts for 20% of your final grade. And again, there's always a possibility of extra credit, though it is not guaranteed. Then we have the basic grading scale. You can see what it is you need to make to get the various letter grades in my class. From there, it talks about a lot of different things, like what is an online course. It has information here on the time on task policy through the state of New York. We also have a policy here at SUNY New Paltz. It's called the online verification policy. You should read that. It basically says that you know that you are taking an online course and that all of the work in that online course is basically going to be completed by you. There's also specific course policies. For example, my FERPA statement, my course diversity statement, issues on makeup quizzes, late papers, and class requirements. The next section is campus-wide policy statements. You're probably used to seeing these because all of these are required to be on every syllabus that you see across campus. So if you haven't read through that, I do highly recommend looking at it. One thing to point out is that for this semester, the SEI, so the Student Evaluation of Instructions, will be administered November 25th through December 9th. So keep that on your calendar. And then, of course, there's the SUNY Credit Hour policy, which kind of explored a little bit more in detail above. So then we get to the course assignments. And again, I'm not going to read all of this to you, but I do want you to flag a few things while I'm going through here. First, we have weekly online discussions. Every week runs from Monday through Sunday. So that's basically your week. It starts on, 11:50. It starts at 12 o'clock Monday morning, and it runs through 11:59 p.m. Sunday night. When it comes to discussions, this is a big one. You should make your first post no later than Thursdays at 11:59 p.m. So for each discussion, you're going to have to respond to the original post that I made, and then you're going to have to respond to at least 2 of your peers. So those first posts where you respond to what I wrote, that must be done by 11:59 p.m. each week on Thursdays. For the responding to your peers, that doesn't have to be completed until 11:59 p.m. on Sundays. So your first posts are due by 11:59 p.m. on Thursdays, and the responses to your peers must be completed by 11:59 p.m. on Sundays. It goes into a little bit more of an explanation here on what it is that I am looking for in these posts, so make sure you read that. Each week there are content quizzes. These quizzes are going to cover the content from that week, whatever the readings are and whatever videos or other readings I have for you available on Blackboard. I do not release those after the fact, but I am more than happy to sit down with you either in person or via Skype and walk through these quizzes if you have any questions about the quiz. Big note, during week 1, there are 3 different quizzes that you need to be aware of. One, there is an orientation quiz, which I'm going to show you where that is in just a second. There is an APA style quiz. This is an upper division class. There is an expectation that you understand how to use APA style. So there is a tutorial and a quiz that you must take. Both the orientation quiz and the APA style quiz can be taken as many times as necessary for you to get a perfect score. So again, the goal here for both those is a perfect score. So you may have to take them multiple times to get that, and pay attention to why you're missing different questions. Also, there's a Module 1 quiz. The Module 1 quiz, which is the content quiz, can only be taken once. So whatever your grade is on that one, that is the grade that you will have going forward. So again, just pay attention that there are 3 different quizzes during week 1, and we'll look at that again in a minute. There's reaction papers. Over the course of the semester, you have to write 4 reaction papers. Now, you cannot submit more than 1 reaction paper in a given week, and that reaction paper in a given week must relate specifically to the content that is being explored that week. So you can't go backwards or forwards in time and try to respond to previous content or future content. So in a given week, whatever the content is that week, that is what your response paper must respond to. And we're going to look at the template that you are required to use here in just a second. So I'm going to keep going forward on that. And again, those are due by 11:59 p.m. on Sundays. There's a final project. There's going to be a proposal due for the final project on October 27th. There are some samples of previous final projects available for you on Blackboard. There is a template that you are required to fill out for that project proposal. If you don't fill out the project proposal, I will send it back to you and make you do it again so that you fill out everything that I'm specifically looking for. You can work with another person on it. I will say, as I always do, that if you work with another person, the complexity of the project is expected to go up. The creative project itself is due by Wednesday, December the 11th by 11:59 p.m. From there, it has a couple other examples of projects that have happened over the years. There's the extra credit statement. It's always possible, but not guaranteed. Here is the tentative schedule for what's going to happen in this class. As it says here, this is tentative. Stuff happens, stuff can change. I remember one year we had, out of nowhere, a hurricane. That actually was 2 years in a row. We had hurricanes that kind of messed up all of our schedules across the entire campus. So yeah, stuff happens. And so when that happens in the fall or at any other time, we make adjustments and try to figure out what's going to be the best way to keep us going forward. So for Module 1, you'll notice I'm going to give you the date range. It's from 8/26 to September 1. You're going to read Westerman et al. Chapter 1 and Guzman, the introduction in Chapter 1. You're going to take the orientation quiz, the APA style quiz, and quiz number 1. So these are the 3 things in addition to the discussions that happened for that week. So you're going to see for each week, you're going to be told what the reading assignments are, what the quiz is, and if there are any other things that go beyond that. Every week you just know you're going to have a quiz. I just specifically put that, just making sure that you know that that's where it's located, is it in the first week's module folder, and I'll show you where that is in a minute. So you can kind of scroll through and see that every week is pretty much laid out the same. If there are important things that you need to know, I have put them in there and they are italicized, like October 14th through the 15th is fall break. So we don't have classes that meet on campus during that time period. Wednesday, October 30th is the last day to withdraw from a course. Monday, November 4th is Black Solidarity Day. Classes are in session. For an online course, we don't have to worry about it if you are participating because you can always do your work later in the week. That's not a problem. But if you are going to be missing classes on campus, please make sure your professors know that that's what you're doing, and it's easier to tell them that ahead of time. Again, you will not be held responsible for any work that was done. You'll have to make it up, but they can't give you a 0 for not being there that day because we do recognize Black Solidarity Day, even though classes are actually in session. And many students decide to participate in Black Solidarity Day events that are happening in the Hudson Valley. On Tuesday, November 5th is the last day to select an SU option for the course. November 22nd, a long time from now, is going to be Thanksgiving. And then Monday, December 9th is our last day of actual class. So just know that, again, a lot of stuff is going to be happening over the course of the semester. And so that is the basic layout of the syllabus for this semester. So I'm going to go ahead and X out of that. But I do want to come down here and check out the textbook information folder. For this course, there are 2 required textbooks. The first one is this one right here. It's an Introduction to Computer-Mediated Communication. It is written by Westerman, Bowman, and Laughlin. It's a great little book. I went ahead because I know many of you aren't going to have your books yet, and it's the first week of class. So I went ahead and scanned the first chapter, which is what we are covering this week. So you can still go through, you can still read the content from this week and participate this week, even if you haven't gotten your book. Same thing is true for our second book, which is edited by Andrea Guzman. It's called Human-Machine Communication, Rethinking Communication Technology and Ourselves. Again, I do have the PDF for the first chapter there. One thing I do want you to know is both books are available either physically or as ebooks, so both of those is an option. The library, I don't know what they have, but the bookstore does carry the physical versions. If you want to get the ebook versions, I went ahead and provided you with the hyperlinks to those websites. Now, this does mean that you need to have both of these books in hand by the beginning of the second week of class, because you're going to be starting to be held responsible for chapters and content that I have not provided for you here. So I only give you the chapters for week 1. After that, you need to have the course textbooks. There's also the mini APA style manual. It is a little red book. That is Also required, especially for those of you who are not as familiar with using APA style, it is a guidebook on how to handle APA style. So please make sure that you check out all of those. So now that we've gone through the course communication stuff, let's go ahead and jump right into the course orientation folder. So here is where we are. This is the video that you are hopefully watching right now. It will have changed. So then it's basically how this is set up is there's a number of different folders here, and it has different content in each one. So like online learning introduction, let's look at that one. When you look at this, it's basically some content about are online courses good for you? What types of things do you need to know? What makes a good online learner? It has an online student checklist. Just some information for you to think through in your desire to take this course. I also have this one right here, which is a student's guide to Blackboard. It's the Blackboard 9 Essential Training for Students. If you are not that familiar with Blackboard, I highly recommend that you take this wonderful course through lynda.com. You do have access to this. Now, it's one of those things that's important to understand, because if you click on this, let's say it may not play.
Welcome to Blackboard 9 Essential Training.
But if you go over here and you click on that, oops, I didn't want to go outside. So it's going to take me outside. I'm going to go back over here. Sorry about that. So here it is, but it's going to want you to sign in or sign up. The reality is you do have access to it. What you need to do is log in through your my.newpaltz.edu, and you'll notice on the left-hand side that it's going to say lynda.com, and that's where you can actually get access to that course. The next folder is how to submit an assignment. So if you're not familiar with submitting assignments, I even have a little test space there for you. It's not required, but it's just a good opportunity if you've never gone through this process to walk through it. Next is how to do discussions. So this is a big one. So let's look at that. First here, there's a couple things on instructions for using discussion boards, specifically in Blackboard. There's a couple videos that you can look at. I have a wonderful document here I call Full Disclosures on Discussions. It basically walks you through what I expect to see when it comes to discussions here in Blackboard. So please make sure that you pay attention to that. I have a wonderful tutorial here on uploading your avatar. One of the things you'll notice is that some people have faces and some will not. I want everyone to have their faces uploaded. The reason why is it makes it a little bit more personal when we are talking and interacting with each other. So you can follow these instructions if by chance you need one that is an accessible version. By the nature of how I had to do this, it's not accessible, but if you need one, please feel free to contact me and I will get that ready for you. From there, we have an orientation. This is your first discussion. And so here you're basically going to tell us a little bit about yourself. And then the last thing I have on here is the image of the discussion board rubric. This is exactly what I use when I grade you each week. So please pay attention to this. So there are some things like the use of course material in the initial post. I expect to see all of our course content reflected in your posts. Is there critical analysis? Timeliness of the initial post. So you'll notice here, the initial post is completed by Thursday at 11:59 p.m., which is when it's supposed to be. If it's done the next day by 11:59, you only get 80% for that. If it's done by Saturday at 11:59, you're down to 60%. After that, you get nothing for that timeliness. Substance of your responses to your peers, the quality, writing mechanisms, and use of APA style. One of the expectations in all of my assignments in this class is that you do incorporate in-text citations and the corresponding references. And to get full credit on that, you do need to do that. And that right there is 10% of your grade. But it's also coupled up here in that use of course material in the initial post. So this is basically making sure that you're doing it stylistically. Up here, I'm checking to make sure that what you're using from the course actually makes sense in the context that you're writing about it. So again, please read this rubric. It really is how you are going to get graded for that. So I'm going to click out of that. The next one is another section here on syllabus and course policies. I'm going to go ahead and open it. So I have this in two places just to make sure that you don't miss anything. And here is the fall syllabus. It's the same one. I do have a document up here on online etiquette and course etiquette. And then I have some more information about those institutional policies. So this is, again, more information about the course and specific policies. Click out of that. From there, there's a link here on how to check your grades. If you're not familiar with checking your grades in Blackboard, that's what it's there for. I then have the Take a Quiz. This quiz is basically going to cover almost everything that I've talked about up till right now in this video and on the syllabus. So please make sure that you take that quiz. And then lastly, but definitely not the least important, is that support. Again, you can always come up here to the support hyperlink, but I broke it down here into academic and technical support here as well. And then last but not least, when you come down here, is summary and next steps, which basically takes you into the very next thing, which is the content of the course. Here is how this is generally laid out. The first thing here is that APA style tutorial and quiz. So I'm going to open it up. You have this. This will launch the APA style tutorial. There's also an alternative link if you have problems with that one. I do have a written script version of it here, which also shows you the PowerPoint slides, and it's a PDF. And of course, right below that is the quiz that you have to take. So again, options here for how you take that, but I do have that quiz that you must pass to show that you understand how APA style must be used at all times. From there, we have the real crux of how this course is set up, which are the learning modules. So I'm going to click on that. For each week, you're going to find modules, and it has the number of the module, which is basically the week, and then it has the dates. And you can scroll down through modules 1 through modules 15. So we're going to just look at the first one, just to show you kind of how this is laid out. It's very simple. You're going to notice here that it comes up, first thing it tells you your weekly readings. When you click on the next button, it has some wonderful videos here for you to watch. I also have the transcripts for each of these videos there for you as a PDF file to make these accessible. From there, you're going to watch a really interesting interview with Tim Berners-Lee, who happens to be the person who invented the World Wide Web. Kind of an important person to know. From there, you're going to watch a documentary called War, related to a wonderful thing that happened back in a long time ago in our country. And I don't want to give anything away, but you will need to log in here. So you would basically log into the library to get access to that. Well, I do want to go back because I did go back to that one real fast. I do want you to notice that this is also a discussion question. So please, it says, make sure that you respond to the discussion part of this as well. So when you click that, again, that's going to take you into the discussion. So there are two parts that you have to be aware of. So when you go in, let me go back real fast. Come on, there we go. It's wanting to jump me right back in there. There we go. So once you've watched this, then you want to click the launch, and that's going to take you into the actual discussion part. The next one is another discussion. It's called Clippy's Revenge. It has some information here. Again, click to launch. It's going to take you into the actual discussion. And then the last thing that you have for any given week is the quiz. So that's basically how the learning modules are set out. So I'm going to go ahead and look at week 2 just to show you again. You have your weekly readings. You're going to have a documentary that you're going to watch looking at the history of the internet. You have a wonderful video from PBS talking about why we are so slow, or why our internet in the United States is slower than where it is in a lot of the rest of the world. Then you have a discussion question along with a reading. And of course, you click on the click to launch to get the discussion going. And then, of course, there is the quiz number 2 for that week. So every week is basically laid out exactly the same. And I did that just so that there's nothing's going to, come out and jump out of something being completely unusual. When it comes to the reaction papers, there is a folder for that, and there's also one for the final projects. Let's look at the reaction papers. Again, as I mentioned, there are 4 of them. You only have to write 4 of these. You get to pick the week and the content that you respond to. My recommendation, though, don't wait till the very end of the semester to do this. Basically, what ends up happening is the last 4 weeks of class, I will start having to put in zeros for each week you haven't completed one of these, and there's no way to make them up at that point. So it's better to do them. Many students actually prefer to get them done right at the beginning of the semester, and that way they never have to worry about them again. I do recommend waiting at least a week, though, from when you do your reaction paper 1 to your reaction paper 2. That way you get an opportunity for me to provide you with feedback before you write that second paper. Because nothing is worse than when you don't get a great grade on the reaction paper 1 because you had some problems, and then you repeat those same problems in the second one because you didn't wait to get that feedback. There's also the rubric here. I'm not going to read through this, but you can go through and see exactly what it is that I am looking for. in how to get a good grade on this. What I do want to point out is right up here at the top. Notice here, it's in all red for those of you who cannot read it. It says you must use this template, not optional. This is a problem. Many people think it's optional. It's not. Do not change this. Do not correct it. Do not make it into a different format. That will not work well for you. So here is the template itself. When you download it, it's going to look like this. I'm going to go ahead and enlarge it just so that we only are looking at one page. I think about 230 works. So at the very top, you're going to see here where it says running head. In APA style, you must have a running head. To change this, you double click in there, and you can literally take this and go, right, my new running head. Now, one thing that you'll notice is that the first page and the second page are this different in APA style. So you want to make sure that you change it on both to my new running head. And that is how you change your running head. Then you can click out of that. Come on. It's not letting me click out. There we go. And from there, you can change the title of your paper and make sure you change your name, because nothing is worse than when I get a paper that says student's name or title of the paper goes here. So you'll also notice that you have a title of the paper that goes there, and also the title of the paper goes on the very first page. For these papers, you do not need an abstract. Please make sure you read this template. It's not just a template. It actually provides instructions as well. For example, a brief introduction to the paper starts here. Make sure you have a clear thesis statement and preview of what will be discussed in this paper. Please note that the introduction does not get a heading. Please note that the sections are marked by bolded center text. Please make sure you keep the headings for this paper, notice here in big letters, as is. This has already been correctly formatted in APA style. If you start messing with the formatting, the chances are you're taking it out of APA style. Don't do that. So the first section after that is going to be the identification of key principles and content. Then from there, you're going to describe a communication situation. This must relate to computer-mediated communication. So if you suddenly give me a wonderful story about you and when you were in Little League, and it has absolutely nothing to do with computer-mediated communication, that's a problem. All of your papers need to relate directly to your own computer-mediated communication experiences. These should also be direct and specific experiences. So you shouldn't talk about, well, a long time ago I read blogs and I read lots of blogs. Well, that's not specific. I want specific things because it makes it a lot easier when you get to the next section, which is where you analyze that communication situation. And you're basically going to use course content to help you understand what happened in that communication situation. From there, you actually have your references. So what I've gone ahead here and done is I've shown you how you can do the very, very first chapter, the introduction of the book in APA style. And of course, here's the Westerman, Bowman, and Lachlan book. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of, and this is very, very, very important, the Guzman book is an edited book. That means each chapter must be cited separately. Yes, let me repeat that again. Each chapter is going to have its own unique and different APA reference. So you can't just cite Guzman and think that you're doing it, because each chapter is different. For example, the sample I give here is the introduction of the book is cited, which is authored by Guzman. The first chapter, on the other hand, is authored by Autumn Edwards. And so you would have to actually cite Autumn Edwards, not Guzman, as the author, because she's the one who wrote that chapter. So here is the correct way of how you would actually do an author in an edited book. And this is the exact reference that you would need to have for doing that. And so each chapter is going to have its own version that looks like this, but the information is going to change. Each subsequent chapter would also receive a different reference and in-text citation. For example, the Western Bowman and Lachlan book, on the other hand, is always just going to be the same thing. One thing I will note with Westerman, Bowman, and Lachlan is that anytime you have three or more authors, you always cite them the first time, listing all of the authors. Anytime after that, it just becomes Westerman et al. Notice there is no comma here. Notice there is no period after the ET. The period comes after the letter L. Other variations I have here for you, just again to help you. And again, if you have any other questions, make sure you take that APA style tutorial and quiz. And if you got any questions at all whatsoever about APA style, never hesitate to ask. So that is the paper reactions. The last thing we have over here in content is, of course, the final projects. I have some sample final projects. You'll notice that there's 2 different places to turn in your final project. We'll talk more about that when that time comes. And then lastly, here is the rubric for how final projects are actually graded. Last couple things I want to point out over here under support. There is a link here to the textbooks, so that goes back to that. I also have right here the textbook Facebook group. So if you're interested and you're on Facebook and you want to follow what's going on, the authors of that, it's really Nick Bowman who runs this. So just there he is. And you can also now follow them on Twitter using the hashtag #MediaAsTools. But basically, this is the Facebook page they created, and it always has some interesting new things that are going on in this area. So I recommend taking a look at it. I do really think that it provides a lot of new information about what's currently happening in the field. So I do highly recommend that. It's not required, but it is going to be one of those things that's going to enrich everything for you. So that basically walks us all the way from the beginning, from the announcements through everything that you need to know about how this course is laid out. I look forward to working with all of you over the course of the next 16 weeks. I hope you have a great semester. Bye-bye.